We're going to kick off here with a 3:30 game Eastern in Oxford, Mississippi, where Georgia's taking on Ole Miss. Ole Miss coming into the game at 2.5-point underdogs. So far, underdogs in the SEC conference games, 29-12-1 against the spread so far this season. In his career as a head coach, Kirby Smart, 30-3 straight up as a road favorite. He's lost to Alabama, lost to LSU, lost to Auburn. He's coached 14 career games where the spread is 4 or less on either side. He's 10-4 against the spread. I'll go ahead and start us off here. It's no secret, Ole Miss needs this game, right? They need it for the season to continue, basically. It's an elimination game for them. Where Georgia, they can still make the college football playoff with a loss, okay?
Yep.
So I don't know. I know, the coaches and everybody want to say that, we don't pay attention to the noise outside the locker room. Well, 20-year-olds are 20-year-olds. They're going to get online. They're going to be on Twitter. They're going to see stuff. Like, it is what it is. I don't know, how much that factors into kind of just a player's mindset. I'm not in their mind, but
coaches say that, and as soon as the game ends, Kirby Smart's running around in Austin, Texas, saying, "Your network, nobody believed in us. Every one of y'all picked Texas to beat us." They listen to it. They just say before the games that they don't listen to it, and then after the games, when they win, they have their emotional outbursts like that, and they obviously do listen to it. So you're right.
Yeah. On Georgia, they had a good second half against Bama and a good first half of the Texas game.
Mm-hmm.
What else can you point to with them?
Second half against Clemson. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah, second half against Clemson, second half against Bama, and first half against Texas. Other than that, this is the most.
They put together 6 quarters of solid football this year.
Yes. Other than that, Georgia has looked very mortal.
Yeah, and Ole Miss, on the contrary, they've trailed for a grand total of 2 minutes this season. Obviously, they lost to LSU in overtime.
Hang on, I want to stop right there for a second.
Oh no. I get it
I
wrong.
want y'all to hear that again. Ole Miss has trailed for a total of 2 minutes this entire season. Think about that.
Yeah, and if you look at the power ratings, I mean, they would just they're right there with Georgia as far as metrics go and everything. I've got major questions about the Georgia secondary.
Yep.
Obviously, we saw what Alabama did to him earlier this year. We saw before he got hurt last week, even DJ Lagway finding open guys in the secondary for touchdowns. Well, touchdown. And I think that, again, it's going to come down to a lot of Kirby Smart versus Lane Kiffin. I think everybody knows where you should go in that situation. But Ole Miss is an extremely talented team. I mean, they're number 2 in the country against the run on the defensive side. You talked earlier about, before that Bama game, if you get pressure on Carson Beck right in his face, and to really any quarterback, I mean, Jackson Dart is susceptible to this
especially
too.
Pocket passers.
So, which both these guys are, and they're just different, it just affects them. And it did for the first half of that Alabama-Georgia game. And something's just not right with Carson Beck. And Ole Miss has 6 defenders with at least 20 pressures. All right. They're ranked number 1 in the Havoc rankings.
Yeah, they're number 1 in the country in sacks and tackles for a loss.
Exactly.
Talked about that last week going into the Arkansas game. And they had double-digit 13 tackles for a loss and 8 sacks.
Yeah.
In one game.
Yeah.
Most teams put that up in 3 games.
Yeah. And on the other side of the ball, UGA, they might be able to just dominate that Ole Miss offensive line, it's probably their weakest. I got questions about Ole Miss secondary too, but the Ole Miss offensive line is just a little suspect in my eyes.
That's it, man. That is the matchup in this game, because let's start there. As far as when you look at the metrics of these teams, there's probably a lot of people, because Ole Miss hasn't played in a really big game since the LSU game a few weeks ago. And obviously Georgia everybody's following along with Georgia. They played at Texas and they just played in the cocktail party. So you would think when you think of an Ole Miss team and a Kirby Smart Georgia team, you're going to think Georgia dominant defensively, Ole Miss dominant offensively. And Ole Miss, again, I'm going to say it again, Ole Miss is number 1 in the country in tackles for a loss, top 2 in the country in sacks. They're one of the top 2 teams in the country in rush defense. as well. And offensively, they're one of the top offenses in the country by the numbers. They're one of the top passing offenses in the country, one of the top total offenses in the country, top 5 in scoring offense. So where I'm getting at is Ole Miss has 2 losses. Kiffin said it this week. They backed themselves into a corner by losing to Kentucky earlier this year. That should not have happened. That was definitely one of those, like you asked a few weeks ago, what are some of the flukiest losses of the year? Mm-hmm. That's absolutely one of them. And as far as putting like a power rating is concerned, putting Team A on Team B against Team B on a neutral field, in my humble opinion, Ole Miss is one of the 10 best teams in college football. Talent-wise and by the numbers. And they went into Baton Rouge at night, led that entire game until the very end. Like you said, they've only trailed 2 minutes all year. So all of that stuff tells you that Ole Miss is one of the better teams in the country. And then this line tells you that as well, with Ole Miss only being a 2.5-point dog at home. Dude, I've heard some people talking about how they think the wrong teams might be favored in this game, which is crazy to say. But the matchup in this game that will decide it will be what you just said a minute ago. Georgia went into Austin, Texas, and punked Texas, and the Georgia D-line punked the Texas O-line. That was the difference in that football game. Georgia's offense did not play well at all against Texas in that game. They capitalized on a lot of those turnovers that Georgia forced deep in their own territory. They gave their offense a short field. That was where almost all of their points came from, was from their defense.
Yeah.
Can Ole Miss hold up against Michael Williams and that Georgia defensive front? That will be the key. Now, I think the difference is Ole Miss last year when they went to Athens, after that game, Lane Kiffin publicly talked about, and he's talked about it multiple times since, that they revamped their entire roster, how they recruit, and the type of players that they go after because of that Georgia and Bama game last year. But specifically the game in Athens where they got just wrecked in Athens last year. He said, we can't compete at a national championship level or an SEC championship level unless we get more length on the perimeter on both sides of the ball, more physicality on both sides of the ball, and specifically, we've got to get better on the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. Three of those 4, check. Length and athleticism on the perimeter on both sides of the ball. Defensive line, again, lead the nation in sacks, tackles for loss, havoc, all of that, check. Offensive line, they've got bigger, but I don't know how much better they are. The numbers tell you they're not much better. Their Ole Miss is as bad as I think the Lane Kiffin team has been at running the football. They're not going to run the football against Georgia. In my opinion, a run play is a borderline wasted play against this Georgia defensive front going into this game. Ole Miss has the goods, man.
Unless Bentley can get to the edge.
That's true. That's a good point. Henry Parrish probably being out in this game sucks.
Yeah.
For Ole Miss, running back. He got hurt against Arkansas again. But you're right. The speed, because we saw Alabama with the speed get to the edge against Georgia, and that really hurt them in that first half. And Dart is very mobile. He's extremely more mobile than Carson Beck is.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see if Ole Miss can get, maybe some ends around with the wide receivers and put them out in space, or quick screen passes, that are basically run plays.
Agreed. But to beat a Kirby Smart defense, you need a quarterback, a good trigger man that can make throws down the field in the explosive passing game, and you need receivers that can go get the football. Again, check with Ole Miss in that. And then you've got to have an elite play caller. Ole Miss has that as well. And the last part is you've got to be able to hold up on the line of scrimmage. Ole Miss can do that on the defensive side of the ball this year, unlike last year. Also, Georgia ran all over Ole Miss, and they had 300-plus yards rushing in that game last year against Ole Miss. Georgia is, I think, either 14th or 15th in the Southeastern Conference this year, guys, in rushing. They are not running the football well. I would imagine that they're going to try to run it a little bit. Nate Frazier, the freshman, ran pretty well against Florida. He's a good-looking freshman. I don't know what ETN. I know he's kind of questionable for the game, but I don't know if he's going to play or not, but it sounds like he probably is going to try to give it a go in this one. But I think Ole Miss defensively can hold up fine here. It just is going to come down to, can they give Jackson Dart time? But I also think that the difference between Texas and Ole Miss going into this game, Ole Miss last year, after that game, everything this year, this is the game they circled before the year started. Everything that they did in the offseason geared toward this specific game and this specific opponent. And then you throw on top of it that Ole Miss is in a must win, have to win, back against the wall situation here at home. If Ole Miss has the majority of their starting lineup playing, because if you haven't seen it yet, Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss released their injury report. And if you know Lane Kiffin, he is the king of troll, of Twitter troll, and the king of just troll in general. The faking injury stuff and all of that everybody's been harping on against Ole Miss. One of Ole Miss's even accounts, one of not their main Ole Miss account, but one of their main accounts that releases highlights and stuff, was, I think, even trolling Ole Miss in that injury report that they released. Because Jordan Watkins, for example, that had over 200 yards receiving last week, not at one point had shown any injury whatsoever.
Yeah. Doubtful.
And they've got him listed as doubtful.
You can't fake injuries if everybody's listed as questionable or doubtful.
Right. They've got 26 or something listed on the injury report as questionable or doubtful. So I'll say this, though. If Trey Harris and Jordan Watkins and all those guys are not playing, yeah, I'm not taking Ole Miss in this game.
Yeah.
But I like Ole Miss to win this game. I'm not giving it as a best bet yet because I do want to see if those guys are playing. I'm not sitting here today and giving it out as a best bet, not knowing that some of their best players are playing or not yet. I think they're going to play. I think we'll know Saturday. They're an underdog at +2.5 right now. I don't care if it goes to pick, whatever. I like Ole Miss in this game. I think they've got the goods. I don't think that this Georgia team is just so much better than Ole Miss, and the numbers and the metrics all tell you that.
Yeah.
That's, like you said, Lane Kiffin versus Kirby Smart. Am I worried about that? Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
That worries me a little bit.
Yeah.
But overall, Ole Miss, by all the numbers and the play on the field up to this point thus far this year, tells you that they can absolutely win this game, and I think they will.
Yep. I'm not sure I would take the +2.5 right now. I'm kind of with you. I mean, you've done a good job convincing me. I will tell everybody, a couple weeks ago, I live in Indiana, so we get early lines on games, and I took Ole Miss +4.5, kind of just not knowing what would happen, and it's moved to 2.5. So I think I'm going to stick with it, obviously. But man, Kirby Smart scares the heck out of me, and trusting Lane Kiffin in a big game scares the heck out of me. But I like what Kirk Herbstreit said in the Georgia-Florida game that he was calling, and he said this Georgia team, because they're a lot of inexperienced guys, really young guys, except for Beck, and he's playing terribly. And Kirby needs them to be in a position where they are doubted, like that Texas game where they were anywhere from 3 to 5 point underdogs. If they're favored by 14.5, like they were against Florida, or favored against Kentucky, or all these other teams, they come out and they underperform. He needs them to be doubted. Again, they're road favorites again. I don't know if Kirby can use what anybody's saying in the media yet and kind of, again, spout off they didn't give me a chance. So I'm kind of with you there. I'm going to stick with the +4.5 for Ole Miss. I'd love to see it get to 3 again. You could take Ole Miss. That would be really nice. But yeah.
If I find out all the guys are playing and it's still +2.5, +3, I may take him +3.
Yeah.
75% on that, and the other 25% on sprinkle on the money line.
There you go.
Yeah.